Hey guys, it's a bad day today. I have to talk about Avowed. As a massive fan of RPGs, especially in the fantasy genre, and as a huge fan of Obsidian, I have to vent. Over the past couple of days or so, I've been seeing some posts about Avowed that were obviously negative. Some showing some ugly characters, others talking about like forced diversity, pronouns and wokeness in general. There were also some other things in regards to animations and the overall outdated look of the game, how terrible it looks in third person, and also apparently it's going to be locked to 30 FPS, even on the Xbox Series X, which is absolutely unacceptable. The same guy we're going to be discussing here today even used a total BS excuse in an interview with Mr. Matty and Lord Cognito about it being first person and not needing 60 FPS, and how it's 30 FPS because they pushed hard on the visuals. Like, nah dude, you didn't really push that hard on the visuals. Some of these character models and everything else don't really look that good. He talks about density and detail and visual effects, but like, look at Horizon Forbidden West for example. It's packed with detail, it's a massive world, it's graphically superior, and it also has visual effects, and it runs at 60 FPS. This just screams of poor optimization and making excuses for no goddamn good reason. Also, first-person games should still have 60 frames per second. Smoothness is an important factor no matter what, but we're going to focus on the other stuff in this video. I ignored most of it because, you know, at first I never like to jump right into these topics. After all, I recognize that some people out there are a little too trigger happy with the woke boycott button. Like, for example, to some people, a gay romance is enough to make them swear off of a game, whereas for me, stuff like this is always wholly dependent on intention. For me, at the end of the day, you can absolutely include good realistic characters who happen to be gay, or for example have bisexual romance options for player characters presented accurately within the setting. In fantasy specifically, gay and bi characters don't raise any red flags on their own if they are done correctly. Again, it's all down to the intention with which the product is being made. If your intention is to purely make a good game, then you will make a good game. Baldur's Gate 3 is proof of that. It's a game that wanted first of all to be a good, fun RPG with loads of choices and options, and a story that is focused on the fantasy world it is set in. The inclusive elements were additions, not cornerstones. Additions that can be totally ignored and whose ideologies did not impact the actual content of the game. In Dragon Age Veilguard, on the other hand, for example, it's the opposite. The inclusive elements and the ideology behind it are the main focus of the game. This is why so much of it is watered down. Everything passes through this lens of inclusion and political correctness, so much so that your choices and options as a player are severely limited. Your character relationships go one way. There can't be any disagreements, and you cannot kick anyone out of your crew or have them leave from disagreeing with your own choices or moral compass throughout the story. Everything is neutered, even the world building, with hilarious factions and characters that are meme-worthy. The assassins are no longer assassins, the treasure hunters are no longer treasure hunters, the hardened warriors are no longer hardened warriors, so on and so forth, because everything has to pass through this ideological filter that eliminates anything that could be either too offensive or risky or morally challenging, such as the treasure hunters being thieves or the assassins being killers, or anything else that could be making certain statements, like making the Grey Wardens be mainly composed of rough, hardened men, for example, or making Tevinter the way it was described previously, with slavery and racism against elves. If they feel like certain elements like these are too sensitive to be put in the game, then they are just going to end up removing them or twisting them and mangling them into something else that severely waters down the world building, which severely impacts the quality of the overall game. More on this in a second. So the intention behind a product is extremely important. For me, that's what ends up telling whether a game that has inclusive elements can still be good and successful, including people and subject matters without sacrificing its own content for an ideology, or if it ends up flopping embarrassingly by, in its effort to be inclusive, ending up excluding the vast majority of players in an attempt to promote brain-rotted ideological bullshit, morality lessons, and totally unrealistic, condescending lectures. So with that said, since I did not know the intention, I was kinda just doing my thing. I've been super busy the past few days anyway, so I just focused on my work, my chores at home, etc. I've been having to take care of my mother post-surgery, and I thought, whatever, we'll see when the game comes out. But I can't ignore it any longer, like things have escalated so quickly, and I suspect that in between now and launch we are going to be seeing even more cringe and, worse than that, actual attacks on fans, which is the thing that pisses me off the most about this whole thing, and I just gotta rant and vent about this a little bit. I'm gonna try to keep it as concise as possible though, so that it's not just a wildfire, but man, this is so frustrating. How does this keep happening? How have these people not learned their lessons yet? And it's not even just Avowed either. There's a woke brigade trying to fucking harass and cancel people who criticize Dragon Age Veilguard. Don't these people realize that this kind of thing, these kinds of attacks, only make people like us criticize these games and situations even harder? It only makes us fight even harder because this is just unacceptable. It's killing the industry, it creates terrible games. Dragon Age Veilguard is a perfect example of that, plus all of the other flops that came out this year. I don't want to see studios with potential being buried by this crap. But anyway, let's move on with Avowed. So, ugly characters, bad animations, and 30 FPS problems aside, Grums spotted a pronoun mentioned in a menu from Force Gaming's early review video. This even got noticed by Elon Musk, who has been outspoken against DEI to a pretty large degree, to the point of telling people who would leverage advertising against him to go fuck themselves. So whenever DEI is brought up in video games, he usually takes notice and believes that DEI is restrictive to art. He quote tweeted Grums saying that having pronouns in a fantasy video game is utterly unacceptable. Then, Matt Hansen, who is the art director of the game and the dude who said all of that stuff about the 30 FPS, he sees it and he starts gooning over the tweet, revealing that he hates Elon Musk so much that he wanted to make him mad with his game. Quote, "Sickos.jpg. I wanted so badly to make him mad with my game, and I cannot believe it actually happened. Just wait until you see the default, you sad little shit." His gooning carried on, saying, "It's honestly deeply surreal to have the world's richest, shittiest boy whine about something I am making. I am frankly quite giddy. I cannot think of a single person in the world I would rather irritate. Anyway, Avowed comes out February 18 next year. Give it a whirl if you ain't afeared of the woke mind virus." Yes. Fuck you, Elon Musk. Fuck you, Elon Musk! Like, why would you fucking do it? Why would you write this? Why would you post this on social media? And why would you advertise your own game with the words woke mind virus? Like, what is wrong with you, dude? It's also worth noting that he's shitting on fans too. It doesn't really matter whether you are Elon Musk himself or simply someone who disagrees with this dude's views. You are not wanted. Quote, "I'm just a fan, but we're all doing our best for our family, country, God, and coach." Matt replied with all sincerity, there is no such thing as just a fan. Y'all are the reason for making this stuff. It is why we do everything we can do to make the game as inclusive as possible. Pissing off the chuds is just a side benefit." This man's unhinged. He's lost the fucking plot. Best of luck to Microsoft, just the entire Xbox Game Studios division, if this is the kind of person that they have ahead of their multi-million-dollar projects that they desperately need to make work in order to justify all of the money that they spent on all of these acquisitions over the years. Best of fucking luck to them when they're hiring someone who only wants to appeal to one type of fan in one tiny corner of the political spectrum, while everyone else just gets shoveled into this big chud box to be insulted or owned, as they say. Outside of this, he's also fucking unhinged or something in completely different ways. Look at this post here. Reminder to black artists out there who are looking for portfolio reviews or job advice. My DMs are open and you will always have my priority. We got too many crusty white dudes in this field. Please, let me help you replace me one day. I want to go back to living in the woods. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? What are you doing, man? You sound fucking insane. Is there some kind of like mental illness at play here or something? We're supposed to see something like this, you know, somehow, and by we, I mean all of us who disagree with him and his stupidly restrictive and even racist, unhinged views, and we're supposed to be the weird ones? We are supposed to be the ones who are somehow at fault, who he feels like he needs to do more forced inclusion for? Like somehow we are the ones that are off. Look at your own fucking posts, dude. Someone please explain to me, how does this keep happening? Please explain to me, how is it that developers think that this is appropriate behavior to have while being ahead of a project? Never mind the social media activity like post whatever you want, but when you're letting it impact your work, hell, not even impact in this case, but straight up inspire and set as a goal of yours, then what the hell are you doing? And how are companies still going along with it? How are like the parent companies in charge of them not getting in the way at all? How is Microsoft or just Team Xbox okay with people in their studios telling fans to fuck off and essentially ruining their own game's marketing by basically telling everyone that their game is about to look like Dragon Age Veilguard, which just released to so much backlash and terrible player numbers because of the clear overt messaging that is more than clear that people do not want in their games. This guy literally used the expression woke mind virus to promote his game. How deep inside of a bubble do you have to be to do that? 10 out of 10. Woke mind virus. IGN. And now I'd like to go back to the part of the statement where the director says, y'all are the whole reason for making this stuff, and it's why we do everything we can to make the game as inclusive as possible. This is a very interesting statement. Totally insane, don't get me wrong. When you take it down to its core, what he's saying is that people simply wanting to enjoy games as they've been able to enjoy for years is the reason why they're now fucking up the games that they are working on. Because apparently all the women, people of color, and gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and trans people who have been able to enjoy these games for decades have been doing it wrong, and they actually need to be incessantly pandered to, misrepresented, and used as a fucking shield for criticism. And everyone else that doesn't fall within the same description, or that even does fall within the same description, such as myself for example, but who doesn't agree with any of this nonsense, well, we can all just go fuck ourselves. Our money is apparently not wanted. But yeah, it's still an interesting statement nonetheless. Basically, if we are to take him at his word, he's admitting that the game is going to be exactly what it should not be, a vehicle through which to push his activism. And by the way of his statement, when he says we do everything we can, he's saying that the entire studio is tainted, or at the very least, he's saying that the directors, the heads of the project, much like himself in the art department, are leading the direction of the game in an ideological way. And after the total failures of 2024's ideologically driven games, I don't know why anyone would say this publicly in a way to promote their game. Are they trying to fail on purpose? Is that it? Is this some sort of stupid-ass anti-marketing thing? Or are these wokies doing like big brain moves? Like, are they actually trying to take down these mega corporations such as EA and Xbox from the inside through anti-marketing campaigns fit to make their games look and sound like garbage? Maybe that's it. If that's the case, then, you know, kudos to them. That's one hell of a goddamn move. At its core, the very statement is so crazy. There's so much to unpack with it. One of the things that I dislike about this mentality is this insane virtue signaling approach to making video games. Games can be super meaningful to people. You can craft truly deep experiences that make people stop and think. Of this there is no doubt, but what I don't understand is why anyone would think that it's okay to use it as a sort of a social engineering tool. I don't like this obsession with wanting to make games socially, culturally, and politically impactful. At the end of the fucking day, you are just making a video game. You're not making government policy. You're not writing a future Bible of any sort for people to follow in the years to come. You're often not even making the next Schindler's List or anything like that. You're just making a game, a piece of entertainment. It doesn't mean you cannot have truly impactful stuff, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try your very best to make the best story that you can. But there is such a huge difference between that and using the medium for propaganda, and you can actually see it in the content. Anyone that plays Veilguard or Dustborn or any of these other fucking failures throughout the year will see just how empty and vapid they are. They have only one goal in mind, and they cannot do anything else. At the forefront of your thoughts should simply be to make the game fun, engaging, enjoyable, to tell a good story with it. Not to twist and mangle it into a platform for socio-political or cultural activism. I don't understand this concept at all, or rather, I get it, I just don't know how games are being used for it when it is antithetical to what games are about. People buy games because they want to escape real life and entertain themselves in fictional worlds with great epic stories and limitless possibilities. Why the fuck would anyone think that it's a good idea to yank people out of those worlds, ground them and berate them about social, political and cultural issues? It's not even like I'm invalidating the issues. Let's just pretend for the sake of the argument that they are all super valid and super important to society. It simply does not fit, and I believe that this is why discourse surrounding gaming is becoming so toxic. The more of this shit is injected, the more patience people lose, the less people care about the very things developers are trying to virtue signal about. It is 100% having the inverse effect, and either I'm fucking crazy and nobody in charge notices, or they notice it but they don't care because they're unhinged, spiteful pricks on a power trip. AAA games are getting away from the aspect of artistry, and they're edging closer and closer to activism, with more and more of these games coming out with overt messaging that is so insanely obvious that it cracks through the immersion and directly reaches onto the player, forcing them to listen or see shit that they don't want to, with the aim to morally grandstand and lecture them in what to think and how to speak. It's too early to tell just how far Avowed does this, but again, if we are to take the director's words as a fact, then we are in for something akin to Dragon Age Veilguard, and for the life of me, I do not understand it. The irony is that this actually does sound like a fucking mind virus, because it's impossible how so many different people across so many different studios all come to the same conclusions, the same solutions, the same everything that simply does not work, and that anyone with sense can see that it doesn't work. This stuff does not help representation. Like, even if I put on my dumbass activist hat and I think the exact same way that this mad guy thinks, which is the exact same way that many within BioWare thought, then I would be doing this because I believe that representation is very important to normalize certain aspects of society, such as 2S LGBTQIA stuff, such as identity politics that allow a person to identify as whatever the fuck they want and choose whatever pronouns to use and have those validated by society. Basically an eradication of the concept of male and female and an embracing of a more complex gender spectrum. How the fuck are you going to normalize this incredibly tiny minority of a thing into a wider audience that either does not care about any of this stuff or that is straight up opposed to it because of the utter lunacy, misogyny and depravity included in it, by forcing this kind of content down their gullet, attached to a fantasy RPG video game that a lot of people have been excitedly waiting for years now, and that should not have anything at all to do with any of these matters. And by the way, yes, it is depravity, because at the end of the day, you cannot escape the association of this stuff with the recent wave of children transitioning issues. It's just not going to work. You're taking something that people have been super excited for and you're taking it away from them. And you're instead replacing it with shit like this that nobody asked for. Stuff that you just injected yourselves into. You're never going to garner the sympathy and positive points that you're looking for. And if that's not what you're looking for, then the problem is even bigger. For more on this, feel free to check out my deep dive video on Tosh. At several points in this video, I talk about the problems with representation of this kind and exactly why it doesn't work, and rather does the opposite of what the activists in these studios aim to do. Of course, this was a good faith interpretation of it, because sometimes I suspect that they don't even really care about normalization. Sometimes I think that they are just genuinely so driven by anger, vitriol and hubris that it's not normalization that they seek. Much like with how Sweet Baby Inc. and other DEI consultants, the goal is not inclusion but rather a total takeover and abolishment of the games industry as we know it, because as we know it, it is packed with unacceptable things for them, such as, video video games being fun. We can't have that. I believe that with these unhinged activists, instead of normalization, what they want is, I don't know, revenge and discrimination or something along those lines, where pleasing their audiences is a big nope, and instead they would rather make these terrible decisions to appeal to an insanely tiny minority driven by hatred. In other words, to the art director of Avowed, what brings him joy is not the crafting of a great video game, it's not the sales numbers of the video game, and it's not even in the positive reinforcement of normalization. Instead, it is seeing chuds online calling his game shit. This is what brings him the most joy. It is to see the destructiveness of his company's reputation in the eyes of the wider gaming audience that he has deemed as chuds, because God forbid that they just want a great action RPG to sink their teeth into and escape reality for a few hours every day without the incessant need of being pulled out of their fantasy and immersion by the injection of current-day bullshit admittedly stuffed into the game with the aim of pissing them off and driving a specific ideological goal. And of course, to piss off Elon Musk. And now this brings me to Microsoft. As I said in the intro of the video, I am a huge Obsidian fan and a huge RPG fan in general. One of the major contributing factors for me buying an Xbox alongside with the PS5 this generation was the acquisitions of Bethesda and Obsidian. So off I went and I got a Series S first. I got it for $260 on a Black Friday sale in 2021. I got Game Pass and I used it for a year while saving money for a PS5, barely buying any new releases. As time went by, I became increasingly disappointed with Xbox. I still value my console very highly because my PC sucks. I can't really game on it very much unless we're talking about classic oldies like Deus Ex and Vampire the Masquerade. So whenever I want to play anything from the Xbox 360 era, I do it on my Series S, and I find it invaluable as a fan of older games. But as a fan of current-gen games, Xbox has seriously disappointed me so far. So many acquisitions, so much hype, and yet so little delivery over time. Halo Infinite didn't seem to be the big banger that they expected it to be. Sea of Thieves was also a big one that sadly released with a lot of issues. Redfall, we shouldn't even talk about Redfall. Hellblade 2, I haven't really played it yet because I don't even feel excited for it. I was hoping for the improvements to be much bigger, a bigger scale game. After all, it took so long to make, right? Like 7 years of development. It might still be really good, I don't know, I have yet to play it. Sooner or later I might, but suffice to say that without Game Pass, I would not be spending top dollar on such a small experience. Starfield also obviously did not go the way that it should have gone. It's Bethesda, like holy fuck. It was a massively anticipated game and it kinda just came out and faded away. Even the expansion came out this year and didn't manage to bring enough players to beat Skyrim or Fallout 4's concurrent player numbers. So right now, the last thing that Xbox needs is for this kind of shit marketing to start popping up for their upcoming games. I was beyond excited for Avowed, a fantasy RPG from Obsidian. Do you have any idea how exciting that is for someone who has been dying for an Elder Scrolls game? But now all of that excitement is gone, just like all my excitement for a new Dragon Age game was gone with the way that Veilguard presented itself, especially with the way that the developers spoke of it and the way that they insulted their own fanbase. I covered this too in this video here, and all of the shit that I mentioned in it that made me nervous and concerned for the integrity of Veilguard turned out to be true. And right now I am feeling the exact same way about Avowed because it is following the exact same pattern. It's actually nuts how similar it is and how it's actually happening. After all, we see the results on Veilguard. Why would they not rein in this kind of narrative about their own video game? This stuff makes me question anything at all coming out of Xbox Game Studios right now, including stuff that does or did have me legitimately excited, such as the upcoming Perfect Dark and Fable game. Earlier this year, Xbox Game Studios put this shit out right here. A big list of incredibly damaging creative restrictions that their studios should follow while creating their games. I've always shown it, but I never actually read it, so let's actually read it this time around. Are you telling new stories or sharing new perspectives within the product experience? Do all of your player depictions look the same? What steps have you taken to ensure characters are represented respectfully and authentically? How have you validated assumptions you have made about your audience to check for blind spots or unintended stereotypes? Would you feel proud to show a member of a community how their culture character is depicted within your experience? How are the wide range of customers depicted within your products, content portfolio, and communications? What process have you used to validate how different groups of people or cultures are represented in your experience? Are you reinforcing any negative gender stereotypes? Are you unnecessarily introducing gender and gender barriers into your code or design? Are you creating playable female characters that are equal in skill and ability to their male peers? Are your female characters equipped with clothing and armor that fits their tasks? Do they have exaggerated body proportions? When the story allows, do you show male characters who display a full range of emotions, including joy, sadness, and vulnerability? What percentage of screen time, on-screen presence, speaking lines, heroes is held by different gender, racial identities? Do you have a process to review key decisions with the lens of helping customers feel seen? Jesus fucking Christ. And there's even more of it to do with metrics to help developers figure out if they are representing things correctly, doing with data and shit. You guys can read it right here. It's crazy, dude. It's just fucking crazy. We didn't need any of this. Nobody fucking needs any of this, dude. This is just beyond obsessive. So much obsession with race, with gender, with sexuality. I don't understand it. I don't understand this fucking obsession, dude. I really don't. I just don't. I wish I did, but I don't. It goes over my fucking head. I don't give a fuck who you fuck. I don't care if the character is whiter than me. I don't care if the character is blacker than me. Why the fuck is this such a massive obsession for these people? This is fucking creepy. This is weird. This is fucking weird, creepy shit. Jesus. I'm missing the retarded gene necessary to understand this obsession. This is the stuff of nightmares when it comes to game development. It's not just that it's restrictive in how you create your world, how you create your characters, how you tell your story, etc. It's also that it's like this massive blob of shit fit to make developers overthink about what may be too much to be shown or what kind of potential message they are sending with certain aspects of a story or a character, and then they end up walking on eggshells and creating utterly boring content because they're afraid of taking risks, because they're afraid of, like, for example, creating a good villain because they don't want people to think that they are sending some sort of message that is glorifying the villain. A great example of this kind of thing is the Baron from Witcher 3. The Baron is such a great character and his quest is such a fucking good time to do because the game tries to humanize the Baron. He is terrible. If you play the game and you know the quest, you know that it touches on, for example, domestic violence. It touches on being a drunk motherfucker all the time. All of these sorts of dramas. And the character himself is not a good man. Like, he's not someone that you would call a good man, that you would consider a good man. But CD Projekt Red wrote him in such an interesting way and designed the quest in such an interesting way that it allows you to humanize the Baron. Despite everything, he is still a father. Despite everything, he is still deeply regretful for his actions. He takes his wife. He is ready to go with her anywhere in the fucking world that he needs to go and abandon all of his titles, all of his money, everything that he has to get his wife the treatment that she needs. You could consider that the Baron does not deserve it. You could consider that the Baron is morally broken and you don't even want that outcome for his quest, and that's perfectly fine, but the beauty of it is that it's up to you. The options are there and the complexity is there. It's up to you to make your own interpretation and take whatever value from it that you wish to take. It's not hand-fed to you. You're not being fucking told that you cannot humanize this character because humanizing this character is glorifying domestic violence or any nonsense like that. In the world of creative restrictions such as these, you cannot have complex characters because complex characters, well, they're complex. Again, look at Dragon Age Veilguard and their inability to have any good writing whatsoever. Not even their villains are compelling, and certain aspects of the game's lore, such as blood magic, is no longer something interesting that developers can let players play around with and figure out their own moral conundrums along the way. Instead, it's painted as an irrevocably evil tool only used by unequivocally evil people. Even Solus himself scowls at the thought of blood magic, yet in the previous game he offers the player character to teach him. This does not make for engaging content at all, and to see lists like these attached to Xbox Game Studios and now seeing it reinforced through the injection of needless pronouns and posts from a director assuring people that inclusiveness is a focus for the entire team and that woke mind virus is an aspect of the game, and that pissing off people like Elon Musk and all the other so-called chuds, which is an umbrella term for everyone who isn't as ridiculously far left as this guy is a goal that makes him giddy, then I'm not really holding my breath for this game at all. It's all very discouraging, and as a consumer, as a paying customer, it just makes me want to save my money and time to buy and play more deserving games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 instead, which releases in the same window. This is such a damn shame, to see yet another promising studio fall down the same rabbit hole of prioritizing political nonsense over simply making a good game to appeal to its fans. This continues on this trend of demonizing fan bases and propping up the elusive modern audience that did not show up for Veilguard and that will not show up for this game either, if this is truly the content that's waiting for us inside. As a fan of the Outer Worlds, and as a guy who solidly believes that this industry benefits from a strong competition between PlayStation and Xbox, so long as that competition is about which of them makes the best game, rather than which of them makes the shittiest Veilguard clone, I am signing out today with a metaphorical tear in my eye. Soon I'll be doing a video with things to hope and look forward to, as it truly is not all doom and gloom, but today I am mourning Obsidian and what could have been for Avowed. I can reserve a thought, hoping that I could hope for this game to still be good, and for this to just be a fucking nutcase of a developer speaking for an entire team that does not actually relate with him, but 2024 has beaten my spirit down way too much, with example after example of unhinged individuals being associated with terrible games that concern themselves more with making enemies of their fanbases rather than realizing their potential and delivering something to make those fanbases proud and happy to have been fans in the first place. It's a really sad time that we're going through in the industry right now, where appealing to your fanbase is a dirty thing to do, as the wider audience of gamers are further and further demonized and shamed. It is instead more appropriate to virtue signal and appeal to this elusive modern audience that just doesn't exist. Or rather, in a way, they do exist, there's just not nearly enough of them to make a big blockbuster AAA game successful. It's enough to fill a niche here and there for sure, but mainline titles, console sellers, big AAA projects, not even close. It is what it is, I guess. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to leave me a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more news, discussions and analysis in the future. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.